Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name is Raymond, and in this video I'm taking a look at The Ghosts Betwixt by Dustin Freund, published by Innocent Traveler Games. This is a dungeon crawler for 1 to 4 players, which plays in about an hour and a half to 2 hours for ages 14 and up. It is set in rural America in the 90s, so it's quite different from your standard fantasy or sci-fi dungeon crawler. And it is artwork by Travis Hansen, who you may know from the Life of the Party webcomic. But before I start explaining how to set up and play the game and share my thoughts, I'd like to ask you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already, and please also visit my Patreon page by clicking the link in the description below. Alright, let's get started. To set up the Ghosts Betwixt, give every player one of the family member boards. There's one for each family member, of course. There's Evelyn, there's Maddox, there's the mother, Joan, and the father, Bill. You distribute all the family members among any number of players. So if you're playing up to 4, every player has one of these dashboards. If you're playing solo, you will be playing all 4 family members, etc. The Quick Play Guide lists how many hit points and family points every character starts out with. Now there's a bit of an oversight that should have been printed on the cards here, but Evelyn starts with 5 family member points, which is basically your mana, if you will, and 5 hit points as well. This is different for every family member. And alternatively, if you have the deluxe edition of the game, you can use this dial to keep track instead of tokens. Also take your tan dice token and place it on the indicated spot, and your light green dice token and place that on the board as well. Also take your activation marker. You've got a marker in your own color with an active and an exhausted side. That is to keep track of whether you've taken your turn this round or not. And also take your standee in your color with your character and just keep it nearby. Next, distribute each family member's starting talent card. Every family member has its own card, and this is the starting talent card for Evelyn here, which is an attack talent called Concentrated Blow. So you simply give that to the character. And if you have any equipment cards, equip them now, and if you don't have any, the scenario will tell you if you can start out with some or not. So in this case, we have a weapon here. This is a melee weapon, which is indicated by the knife here. There are also ranged weapons, which have these water pistols. So you put that in your hand, that's an equipped item. You also have some cards that are ammo. It will tell you right there on the card that this is ammo, so you can put that in equipped ammo, for example. And after you've done that, take all of these cards and give them a shuffle. Now the rules will tell you to set aside from the equipment deck the equipment cards numbered 1 through 17. You can tell their number in the bottom corner right here. So this is card 1. So you take those cards and you set them aside. You shuffle the rest of these equipment decks. You shuffle the item deck cards, your drop deck. You take the monster deck cards, you don't need to shuffle those, and you shuffle the beastly and the humanish monster weapon cards. Later in the game, you'll also have this green and blue equipment deck, but for your first game, you won't be needing those. But later, you'll also give those a shuffle and add them to the rest. Then also take your condition tokens. There's positive and negative conditions, and just keep them nearby. And also the status effect tokens, which you, again, won't use in your first game, but they will come into play later. Then take 4 of these family member target tokens. They have a target on the back. There's 4 for each family member, and you put them in a bag. If you have the deluxe edition, you'll have this nice Ghost Betwixt bag, but just take any bag and put them in there. Those are used to draw the targets that the monsters will target. Also give every family member their personal journal to keep track of their experience points and their health and all kinds of stuff, and Bernard bucks that you will encounter in the game. And if you don't have this notepad, which is, I believe, also from the deluxe edition, you can check the rules reference book, and in the back there will be sheets for every family member. Here's the other ones on the back. So just take those to a photocopier and make copies and give those to all the players. Then give every player one of these rules reference cards, which have all the different phases that will happen during the game listed on them and what they do. And on the back of the cards, you have all of your actions that you can take and how the dice and the icons work and what they mean. So this is a very handy reference to have. So give one of those to all the players. Keep all the dice nearby. There's a whole bunch of them and you'll be needing lots of these during the game. Keep the monster stands nearby as well. There's also a bunch of these, and you get stickers with the game so you can label them with numbers to indicate which monster of which monster group you have targeted. And also keep the relevant monster standees for that mission nearby to use. Also take the mission objective card. So every mission will have the mission number in the top left here. So these are all the cards for mission 1. Don't read all of them yet. Just look at the first one and on the front. Don't flip them over unless you've completed it during the game. And this is also something that you read out at the start of the game so you know what your objective is, and keep those nearby as well. You also get some black D6s and a black D8, which is used for spawning stuff on the maps. Just keep those nearby as well. And for the first mission, you will take the mission guide and read the introduction, the prologue, and you will get some starting equipment right here. But every mission tells you if you can get some more equipment, or if you already have some equipment from a previous mission, you'll just have that. And here it says mission 1 and the mission setup. So every mission will have a map setup, and it will tell you which tokens you use to make the maps basically. So these are rooms 1 through 7. So the mission will tell you keep those map tokens nearby and give those a shuffle, make a stack. So that's basically these here. So you just stack those all together. Those are your map tokens, so they correspond with rooms. And then you also have fate tokens. The fate tokens are all the tokens that have this pentagram on the back, and every mission will tell you which tokens you're gonna need, and you shuffle all of those together in a big stack. And normally there should be a 1-to-3 ratio of these fate tokens to map tokens. So in other words, for every map token, you'll have 3 fate tokens. So knowing this, and that these are the numbers for the maps for this mission, you can already search and find maps 1 through 7. And in this particular case, for this mission, we're gonna start in the bathroom in tile 1A, which is this. And then this room has 2 doors, so let's just set that mission up as well. So you simply make some space in the middle of the table. You put your map tile down. This is 1A. On the back there is 1B, but in this case we're going to need 1A. It also tells you to take 2 door tokens, put them on a stand, and just put them on either side where the door openings are. They're always a black bar like this. And you can place your map tokens and your fate tokens near one of those doors. Then you read objective card 1 and you can start playing. That's the basic setup for a mission. Let's explain the rules. In the Ghosts Betwixt, we're cooperatively going to explore the Bennard's Farm, the World of Terror, and we're going to try and finish these objectives together. So if we look at our cards here, for example, in this first mission, first objective, we're going to find the door to the basement, and this is a locked door. It's already indicated here. But it says here, during a drawing phase, draw a locked door token. That's the first thing we're going to try to do, and then we'll read the rest. So in this stack of fate tokens, there is 1 locked door token as per the setup for mission 1. So we've seen all the tokens that we need to put in the map stack and in the fate stack right here. So it tells you right there that there is 1 locked door token, and that's randomly shuffled in. So somewhere in this stack, there is that door, and sooner or later we will find that. And once we do, we simply take the card again and we read the rest, and we complete all of these objectives. And when we do, we flip over the card and read what it says, and then continue to objective 2. And that's basically how you play the game. So the game has several phases, like we've seen on this handy reference card. There's the exploring phase, the drawing phase, the spawning phase, and the fighting phase. And in short, in the exploring phase, you're going to be investigating. You can look around for stuff in the room. and you can initiate the drawing phase, which is basically you're opening one of the doors that's there. If there's a door somewhere, you can go there. One family member needs to be next to the door to open it. Then you remove the door token and you draw a map token. So that map token will have a number on it, and you place the corresponding map tile matching, you know, some entrance. You can rotate the tile however you want, as long as there's a door matching this door entrance here. So you place that map tile, then you draw 3 fate tokens. So every map token will have 3 fate tokens, and you spawn whatever those are later in the spawning phase. You check if there's a fork in the road. So if the next room has more than one exit, that means you have to place multiple doors. Then you place those doors, and if you do place multiple doors, you basically split your map and your fate tokens and divide them over those 2 doors. And you kind of have to do it one by one and not just split the stack like that, because in some setups, in some missions, you will have a fixed number of tokens on the bottom, and so you want to have those. So basically what you best do is just take them and let one token fall from the bottom, and then another one, etc., etc., and then maybe the rest you can divide however, without looking at them, of course. And this is just simply you split them in 2, and it could be an unequal number, but that's okay. And then you move the map and fate, that's what I just said, tokens, and then you go to the spawning phase. So you resolve the fate tokens that you drew, and you could have monsters or traps or whatever. So the first ones you drawn to the last ones you drawn, and you basically spawn them by rolling dice. So you have these dice, and let's just do an example of that. So I'm drawing a map tile. So this is 4. So we drew map tile 4 while opening, say, this door. So we've opened this door, just remove it from the board, and I look for map tile 4. So I've already set aside maps 1 through 7, and this is map 4. It says right here 4A. So now I can choose whether I want to put it down like this or like this. Let's just put it down like this. So this door now corresponds with that door. So we have that. You can just line up the grid more or less. So now this room only has 1 extra door. So that's good. So that just means I keep this stack and this stack nearby. So now that we've explored or opened this door to this room, we found room 4, we draw 3 of these tiles. So the first one is going to be a door. So I already placed that one there. So the second one is going to be monster group 2. And the third one is going to be a treasure 1. So since I have already placed that door there, this is basically already resolved. Monster Group 2 and Treasures, these are basically referred to in the mission guide. So I take the mission guide once again, and I check out 1 page further than the setup here, and it tells me there are several monsters, and these are the 5 tokens that we have in the stack, and they correspond with these monster groups. And the treasure here is also listed here. So there's 1 through 10. Because there's 10 different ones, and we randomly drew a number. So the first one says draw from the brown equipment deck. So if we manage to get that token or clear the room, we get a card from the brown equipment deck, which is great. But now we found group 2, monster group 2. So that's a guard dog and a Bennett lackey, it says right here. So I take one of those guard dogs. I'm going to take the one with number 1 because there's only 1, and one of the lackeys. So if you have a group that has multiple of the same creatures, so for example the third one here has 2 of these spitting silverfish, then you would need these tokens, these standees, and you'd simply number them going up from 1. So that's why I've already prepared all of these. You can do that before playing, which saves a bit of time while playing. So now we have all of that. So we have a treasure, we have some monsters, and now we need to spawn those. Now a little explanation about the door. If I did not draw a door tile while exploring a room that does have an exit like this, then I wouldn't place a door here because I didn't draw one, and this would basically be an open passageway. So when that happens, I draw more tiles, so I draw another map token and spawn a new room. But you only do that once, so you don't keep spawning new rooms and new monsters and new tokens if you don't draw door tokens. You only do that once after the first room, so you can get a maximum of 2 rooms that you explore in one go. On the other hand, if I draw more door tokens, then there are passageways on the next tile. Then I found a secret room, basically a secret door, and I can place that door token on a standee and place it anywhere along an edge that is free. So, and then I can explore that later, and that will be a secret room. So then we spawn everything in the order we drew them. So we already did the door. Then we get the monster group 2, which is these 2 guys. So I spawned them with the dice, and this is a 6x6 room. So I simply take a d6 and I roll it first for the x coordinate and then for the y coordinate. I'm going to take the 0 here in the corner where the door was. So this is y and this is x. You can do it any way you want. But you roll the die, and so now it's 2 in the x direction. That's 1, 2. So in this column, and then I roll again, and that's 4. So I'll do the first one. The first one on the list was the dog. So I do 2 and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So the dog's right here. We got a second standee, so I'm going to do it again. So 6, that's over here. And then 5, he's way in the back. That's good. Should you land on one of these obstacles, which are indicated with the red dotted lines here, so for example, if I had rolled it here, then I just move it 1 spot to wherever I want. A treasure token is simply kept near the map, so I can just put it here, and then after everything is cleared from this map, I can resolve the treasure. So now that we have found a guard dog and a Bennett lackey, we need their monster cards. So let me just put this to the side for a bit. I'm going to take the monster deck and I'm going to search that for the corresponding cards. So here we have the guard dogs and the Bennett lackey, and you just keep those cards on the table nearby. So I'll just put them here for now. I'm going to take this out of the picture for a bit so we have some more room here. So I'll put this here and this here. Now a monster group can spawn up to a maximum of 6 monsters. Now in this monster group, like we've seen here, we've only got 1 guard dog and 1 Bennett lackey, so that's easy. But we can also draw, for example here, 3 rabid ferrets. So that means we only have the 1 card for the ferrets, but we have 3 standees. So how do you keep track of that? So basically you get the ferret card, which is this one, but I will demonstrate with the cards that we have right here. So for example, if we had, say, up to 6 guard dogs, you basically make an imaginative circle or like a clock around your cards. So that would mean you'd have a space here for the first dog, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth dog standee. And all of them have a number of hit points. So in this case, the dog has 4 hit points. So all 6 of those standees, or whatever number you have at the moment, would have that many hit points. So what you do is you simply take the tokens. I got 4 of these hit point tokens, and I place 4 here for the first group, and I could place 4 here and 4 here and 4 here, etc. for every group to keep track of every standee. And that's why these numbers are so important on their basis. You know, that this is just 1, but if I had a second one, I'd take base number 2 and put that one on the board as well. The Bennett lackey has 6 hit points, so I'll take 6 of these tokens. There's a 3 and there's also a 5 if you need it. And some of these monster cards will also indicate with this icon right here that they have a monster weapon, an MW card. And this is of course a dog, so this needs a beastly monster weapon, whereas the Bennett lackey has a humanish monster weapon card. So I also look at those decks there. So I draw a beastly card for the dog, and this is in this case a foaming mouth here, which gives it a green attack die. And it has a couple of things that can happen here when you roll these icons right here. You can be lightheaded 1 or lightheaded 2. And I put those over here as well. If I have multiple, again, I just draw another beastly card and I put 1 here on the left, so you need a bit of space here. For the second one here, for the third, 4, 5, 6, etc. Just like we do with the hit point tokens. So this one has a humanish card. And I'm gonna put that one right here. So this one has a gray water leeches. So this is an infected dude. All right. So I'm just gonna put this on top of him right here and put this here. So you're gonna need a bit of table space to keep track of all of those. If you have multiple monster groups that all have multiple monsters, which could happen later on in the game. So you need a bit of space for that. Should you find traps in the fate stack, so let's see if we can find any right here. So for example, here is a trap token. Then you simply spawn that as you would a monster. So you simply roll dice and check where that trap is positioned. And again, if it's on a red space, you just move it a bit further, one space, and that will be a trap that will happen. If you trigger that, and trap tokens may deal damage or cause conditions to monsters or to you, and they are activated by the Stumble ability. And Stumble is an ability that you find on weapon cards or on monster cards. Some monsters have that ability here. For example, the Banner Lackey has Stumble 1, that on a successful attack, it is automatically applied. And well, I'll have a closer look at this. So for example, here it says Stumble 1, and it has no icons next to it, so that just is a passive ability. So if they hit a family member with an attack, they push that family member away from them by one space. And so if you push them into a trap that way, then the trap goes off and triggers that. Usually bad news, of course. If it has icons like these next to it, then you need to roll that in order to trigger that ability. If you voluntarily walk into a space with a trap, you don't trigger it. There's more types of tokens that you could possibly draw besides treasures and monsters, doors and traps. There's also surprise events, there's ambushes, and even vending machines, which will help you get some items. These are all explained here. I'm not going to go into all of them for the sake of the length of this video. There's also story tokens, which will have you read some of the story, and that advances the story a bit, you know, so you read what it does here. So long story short, after all of that, all of those tokens have been resolved, you basically enter the fighting phase. So this is basically the meat of the game, as it were, and you start moving your family members into position to fight these monsters. And you take turns, so one family member, you can choose which family member will go first. So you make a plan, and then the first family member goes, and then one of the monster groups goes, so the first monster group, which is the dogs in this case, so that one goes, and they move and they attack. Then another family member goes, of your choice. Then the second monster group goes, and again, if this were multiple standees, all of those take their turn. So one by one, so 1, 2, 3, 4 standees, they all go. Then the third family member goes, and if there are no monsters left after that, then the fourth family member goes. And that's the end of one round. So I'll briefly also go over the anatomy of a character board right here. So there's a whole bunch of icons and numbers on there. So first of all, you have, of course, there in the middle, the hit points and the family points, which we already saw during the setup, which basically can be used to put your tokens there, or you use one of those trackers right here, like this one that I showed you if you have the deluxe edition. That's simply to keep track of your health and of special points that you use for special abilities and such. The cards that have these on them will indicate, such as this one over here, this yellow card right here has one family point in the bottom left. So that means if I want to trigger this, I simply take one of those tokens and discard it, and that's that. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, over here we have agility. So your agility is basically the amount of hit successes that a monster must roll to hit the family member. All family members have a number of 1. Some creatures might have a higher agility, so they are harder to hit. So you need more hit successes in order to actually deal damage. You've got speed right there. So the speed is the number of movement points a family member receives by moving a move action. So if you're moving, you can move up to 5 spaces right here. Then the range, so your range is the number of spaces needed to be within attack range of a monster. So that's also very important to know. Then you have your strength, which is listed. I just have one hand free right there. Strength 3 with the LO dice. That's the light orange die. And that means if that family member uses a melee attack, the family member will use this die represented here by this icon. There's also accuracy, which is the one next to it, and that is when you use a ranged attack. You will use this die, which is the light yellow die in this case. So we have all kinds of dice there that correspond with those colors. You have a base hit die, which is on the top left over here. This one is light green. Evelyn here has a light blue die, for example. That's your base hit die. So when you're doing an attack or an attack talent, then the base hit die will always be included in the family member's attack. And you add that to your weapons hit dice and any bonus hit dice and your damage dice. So depending on if you're using a ranged or a melee attack. So basically that makes up your dice pool, what you're rolling. You also have a base defense die. That's the bottom one here. So if you're not attacking but being attacked, then you will always have this defense die. So when a monster attacks you, you just roll that. That is included in your defense dice pool. Unless you're frightened. When you're frightened, you can't use this. And when you're lightheaded, you can't use this die. But that's all explained in the rules. Now, on the right here, you have these bonus dice. So in this case, it's a light green and a tan one. It's the same for Evelyn over there. And those are bonus dice tracks, and some events can earn you bonus hit dice or bonus defense dice. So the top one is hit and this is defense, and you can keep track of that with those tokens over there, and you can just push them up if you have extra bonus, and those will be spent whenever you attack or defend. You might also get conditions. Condition tokens are kept here in this spot, and these icons indicate that the family members have elemental weaknesses. Basically, family members are weak to all 4 of these elements, and some monsters might also have elemental weaknesses, but family members have all 4. And like we saw during this setup, there's also these equipment slots for cards. So you got the equipment card for something in your hand. You can have 2 hands free, or if you have a 2-handed weapon, you only have 1 and you can't use the other one. You've got an equipped item. You can have ammo cards, you can have accessory cards, and armor on your head, chest, and feet. Now, aside from all the cards that you can keep on your board, you also have an inventory, and you can keep up to 5 extra cards near your board, and then you can swap them around if you want to equip another one. But you have to have it in your equipped item slot in order to use it. Monster cards have a similar anatomy right here. So we've already seen their hit points right here on the right. They also have an agility of 1, so you only need 1 hit success to actually hit them. In this case, there are also stronger monsters or quicker monsters, of course. This is the experience they gain. So if a family member defeats one of these monsters, they get 2 XP in this case. And these are Bernard bucks. The dogs don't have any money on them, but the lackey, for example, has 1 Bernard buck. So if you defeat one of those, you get money. Then you also have a defense die right here, which is the tan die in this case over here. So you basically add that to your dice pool when you're attacking this guard dog. They also have an attack right here. So these are their attack dice. They have a light blue and a light yellow dice in this case. Some monsters have different ones, of course. Their speed is 6, so they move 6 spots maximum if they move. And they have a range of 4, which we've already seen as well. These have an elemental weakness to frost in this case of 1. They have some abilities right here. There's some flavor text. There's their creature name, and whether they draw a monster weapon or not. If there's nothing here, they don't. And some effects that will trigger upon a attack. So these attack dice will have those icons on them as well, as you can see there. So for example, if they have the light blue die right here, see there, if this is rolled, then they might trigger that ability. A burst is a hit. There's also a double one. There's also halve one, so you need to roll 2 of those in order to get that. There's a blank on this die, but all those dice are different. Now the monster weapon cards will also have icons on them. So this basically tells you, hey, add a green die to the attack. That's simple. And it has, again, some of these effects that might happen. This icon tells you that this attack requires them to be in melee ranged, and some of these cards will have the water pistol icon, and then all the monsters in that group will have a ranged attack. There's more different symbols. They're all explained. Some creatures have flight, they'll have a wing, and some creatures have a hit and run ability where they, after attacking, always try to retreat. And aside from adding an extra die to their attack roll, they can also have extra damage. Now, this does 0 extra damage on top of the damage that their standard attack does. But if this was a number, then you do more damage when you get hit by this monster with that attack card. Equipment cards also have all kinds of logos and dice, so they will also add dice to your attack. They'll tell you if they're a melee or range attack, if they do extra damage, etc., etc. They also have a cost. Sometimes you can buy cards or even sell cards. I'll go through that very quickly, so I don't want to go into too much detail there. And on your reference card, you can also see which kind of dice there are. So these green and blue ones are your hit dice. The yellow and the red ones are the damage dice. So these tell you whether you hit or not. These tell you how much damage you're gonna do. And the white, tan, and brown dice are your defense dice. And these are the icons here. So you can already see what they are. So a burst, like I showed you, that's a success. So one success basically just counts as one success, and if their agility is 1, you only need 1. If their agility is 2, you need 2 successes to successfully hit them. The symbol right there, the diamond, already told you that is also some kind of effect, which is also listed on their monster card or on their weapon card or on the family item card. So keep an eye on that. The shield will be on these brown and white dice, and that means, of course, that you defend against a hit. You also have quarter shield, so you need to roll more of that. If you roll this this target symbol here, then that means the monsters retarget. So one thing I forgot to do, and we'll explain in a bit how targeting works. And there's an evade symbol, which means they completely evade one successful attack. So that means for every success you roll, if you roll an evade, you completely miss that attack. So if a monster evades your attack, you completely miss, vice versa as well, monsters versus family members. So these are actually pretty good symbols to roll. That means any one success is cancelled out completely. The shield, however, basically just cancels out 1 damage. So if they roll a number of damage, so let's say, for example, this dice, so these are the damage dice, so you can see they have a number of damage ranging from 1 to 4, so you can do a lot of damage. But for example, if I rolled 2 and a monster rolls 1 shield, then one of those would be cancelled and I only deal 1 damage if, of course, I had a successful hit. So like I showed you in the setup, you got a bag with those targeting tokens. So every time you draw a monster card, for each monster, you draw one of those tokens, and that will be the family member they will prioritize attacking. So you just put that near that group, and if you have multiple, once again, you just put those tokens around the card for each monster in that group, and they will all have their own family member that they will be attacking. And they will keep focusing on attacking that family member until you roll that that cross hair symbol, which you'll find on the brown and the tan dice here. So for example, you roll that, that means you remove that one, you draw a new token, and then you get perhaps a different family. It could also be the same family member, and then you put the other one back into the bag. So your monsters will constantly be attacking targets or changing targets. Now, before a round of battle begins, every family member will have 1 free action they can take, but that cannot be a movement or an attack action. So these are all your actions right here. So you can't move, you can't attack, you can't use an attack talent, but you can use other talents, or you can take offensive stance or a defensive stance, use an item, ready an equipment, or trade with a family member. So these are 3 things you can do at the start of each round. And a round again means that every monster and every family member takes turns attacking, and after all of that is done, a new round starts. So the most important ones here are the offensive and the defensive stance, and that means that you can use these tokens here to advance either your offensive stance or your defensive stance by 1. So if you think you're gonna get attacked because they targeted you, you might want to take a defensive stance. Or if you're not targeted by any of the monsters, you might go for an offensive stance and do this instead. And this board will have ×1, ×2, or ×3 for the defense dice, and ×1, ×2, and half a success for the offense dice. So the further you go, the more you can do, but you have to spend this on your next attack. So you can't keep this for an entire round, then it will be wasted. So use it or lose it is the message here. And that simply means if you use it, you simply add, in this case for your attack, a light green die to your attack dice pool. Or maybe 2 if you get more of those. And then you tan 1 again simply means a tan die to your defense pool. All those other actions are pretty straightforward, mostly explained on the cards themselves. If you use an item or a non-attacking talent or readying equipment, that means you rearrange cards on your dashboard from your inventory to your equipped items, or trading with a family member. So then when the actual battle begins, you need to check how far you can move and how you can attack and such, and how you want to position yourself. So in this phase, once there's monsters on the board, those movement points matter. When they're not, when you're in the exploration phase, you can basically just freely move around because it doesn't matter that much. So in this case, Evelyn here has a speed of 6, so she could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and try to attack the dog. A character can move in any direction, both orthogonal and diagonal, so you can move like 1, 2, 3, 4, of course not through red spaces here like the couch in this case. And spaces occupied by a monster you can still pass, but it will cost you an additional movement point. So you have to have enough movement points left if you want to move through an obstacle like an enemy. If you want to pass a space that go between an obstacle and an enemy like this, so if I want to go diagonally here, that will also cost me 1 additional movement point. Now you cannot move onto or through red obstacles like this, but you can move through what's called harsh terrain, and those will have a yellow dotted outline, and that also costs 1 additional movement point. There are also hazardous spaces which are dotted with a blue dotted line, and those will deal elemental damage depending on what kind of space it is, or negative conditions such as bleeding, and characters will always avoid them, so you can never actively go into those spots, but you can be pushed in if an enemy attacks you with stumble. This is also important for ranged attacks. If you're doing a ranged attack, so for example, I'm standing here and I want to attack that dog, I can't because I would be crossing an obstacle, the red dotted line, so I can't attack through red obstacles. I can attack over blue or yellow harsh terrain or dangerous terrain. If my line of sight would just go through the edge, I can still attack. So if the dog was standing here, for example, then my line of sight would go through here and it would just clip the corner there. Then a ranged attack is allowed. Now, to perform a valid attack, the family member must first declare which monster they are going to attack, and you of course need to be within range. So if it's a ranged attack, you need to be within the range that is listed on your character, or perhaps on a card, if you have a weapon card that perhaps has a wider range. But normally you would look at this icon here. If you're performing a melee attack with the knife symbol, you have to be adjacent to the monster you're attacking. You must also have line of sight, which I also briefly touched on with the terrain here. But to determine a line of sight, you must have one corner from your space must reach 2 corners of the target's space. So for example, if I'm standing here, then this would be a corner I couldn't reach this space, but I can reach that one. So like I said, I'd have to be here, for example. Then I could see this and this corner without going through that red terrain. And then, of course, you determine your attack dice. You gather your attack dice to form your pool. You see what your basic attack is. If you have any boosted attacks, perhaps, or some dice from your weapon. So this would be an extra green die. So Evelyn here would be able to attack with a light blue die here, with a green die if she uses the little Johnny's first switchblade there. So that's that. Then perhaps she had taken a offensive stance. That means she now takes a light green die and then puts this token back. And for her basic attack, her strength, here is the light yellow one, which would be this one. So she has 4 dice here to attack with. And the guard dog has a tan defense die. So you add that to the pool. So you take those dice, give them a roll, and you check if you have a hit. So this is a hit. There's no evasion from the dog. That would be this. So they don't evade my attack. It was actually a blank, so that's really good. So I do hit, but I hit for 0 damage. If I had rolled 1, 2, or 3, I would have done that much damage. But I do hit, so I could perhaps see if these symbols do anything for me. So then I can actually check my blade here, and I could do pierce 1 or bleed 2 or second effort. Now a second effort means that if you didn't roll any hit successes, you can re-roll all the attack dice. Well, we did roll a hit success, I just didn't do any damage, so that's not the one I'm gonna use. I could use the bleed 2 ability here. So that means I would take one of these negative condition tokens here, and it has bleed 1 on one side and bleed 2 on the other side. Basically, that means for 2 turns. So you would put that on that guard dog over here. So I just put it there. And what it does is at the end of that character's activation, it loses 1 hit point. So that goes the same for your heroes. So at the end, after the dog has gone, has taken its turn and has attacked, then it would lose 1 hit point due to bleed, and then I flip it over, and then on the next turn the same would happen, and it will lose another hit point, and then the token would be removed. And the rules reference has a list of all the diamond abilities here, so those are all explained in this page, page 11. And here are all the harmful conditions on page 12. So there's bleeding, lightheaded, stunned, crippled, blind, frightened, weakened, disarmed, and attached. And then there's some helpful conditions as well. So you can feel refreshed, concentrated, sharpened, and amped. So I'm not going to explain all of those. They're just explained here in the book, as well as these abilities. Now, sometimes a ranged combat, even when you have line of sight, can be obstructed, and you can get an obstructed penalty. And that happens when the attacker is adjacent to a non-friendly character, or if they have line of sight that passes through a friendly character. Then you get an obstructed penalty, and that means you have to add a white die to the defense of the character that you're attacking. If the line of sight has 2 of those things happening, so obstructed twice, if you will, then you can't attack. A final important thing for combat is that you can get a blindside bonus, and that means when you're one of the family members, you're attacking a creature, and if you're occupying a space that's directly behind a monster based on the position that it's facing, as you will notice that these standees have a front and a back. So if this dog was facing this side and Evelyn was attacking it from the back, then your strength or accuracy is increased by 1. So what does that mean? This character, so Evelyn, has a strength of light yellow, accuracy as well. She's in melee range and she's using her blade, so she would use her strength die, which is normally light yellow, which we did previously, we used that. But then you check your card and you get a bonus, so you can increase your light yellow in this case to dark yellow, or dark yellow would be increased to light orange, and light orange would be increased to dark orange. So in this case, instead of this one, I would roll this. No, that's a light orange. The dark yellow die, that's this one. right? Which has a higher chance of dealing damage if it would focus there. So there you go. So it also has a 0, but it has a 1, a 2, another 2, and 2 3s, which is a higher chance than this die, which has a 0, 2 1s, 2 2s, and a 3. So there's a lot going on in combat. You can use your positioning, you can use stumble abilities to your advantage to push enemies into traps or into hazardous areas. You can afflict conditions, or you can get helpful conditions yourself. You can take into account the elemental damage that characters are weak to and try and do that kind of damage to them. You have a bunch of abilities on your weapons, on your weapon cards, so do the enemies. So you like this card will also have these extra abilities with the diamonds here. So there's all kinds of cool things going on in combat that you need to take into account and discuss cooperatively when you're going into attack mode. And monsters pretty much attack in the same way as your family members do. They also have ranged or melee ranged attacks or melee attacks. And of course, like I said, they have a target priority. So this one I forgot to draw a token for. This one would attack the father, and this one would attack Maddox. So yeah, those are also things to keep into account. And like I said, every time you roll that crosshairs icon, they change possibly their targets. And at the end of a full round, where every character, so every family member and every monster has done an attack, they also draw new tokens, so they might retarget who they're attacking. Should a family member get knocked out, so lose their last hit point in a battle, then you remove that family member from the map. So you can take it, this one fell over, so I'll take that one off. And during a battle, you can get family XP, which is listed here. You just keep track of that. And you get personal XP as well. But when you're knocked out, you remove the XP you gain in that battle. You also lose half of your Bennard bucks that you earned on your journal. So every cash that you wrote down is halved, rounded down. And should all family members be knocked out, then the mission is lost. And then you can choose what to do next. You can either set each family member back to maximum hit point and family points. Yeah, that's your mana. You can level up your family members that have enough experience and or spend talent points to upgrade talents, which is here. I haven't even touched on that. So you can also have certain talents. You can buy or sell goods if available, and then you can start the mission over and try again. Now later in the game you might also unlock what is called scavenger haunts, which are side missions. And then instead, if you lose the game and you have to restart, you can, instead of redoing the mission, also do a scavenger haunt first and then retry. Now once all monsters have been defeated and removed from the board, then you can check out which loot you got. So in this case, we remember that this one was basically draw a card from the drop deck. So you simply draw a card and you see what you get. In this case, you find a pair of Bennard bucks. You gain 2 bucks, which is great. You note that on your sheet. And for every monster token that was defeated, which in this case was only 1. We did have 2 monster groups, but it was just the 1 token. And for every token that was removed from the board, you also take a drop deck card. So in this case, we get some chocolate, instant bonus. And later on, you'll also find equipment from those equipment decks. And whenever you gain an equipment card, you can find them through a treasure token, for example, as well. You can give it to any family member. You can decide who gets it, and you can place it in their inventory right away. Or if it's better than what you're currently equipping, you can also immediately swap it out from your inventory to your equipped item. And if you find a monster and defeat it that has a green or blue monster weapon, so these monster weapons here, sometimes you'll find a green or a blue one. So for example, this here is a green monster card. So it tells here this is a base monster weapon, green. So when you defeat this monster, you get a chance for a more rare item. So how does that work? So the mission book, I'll show you a little bit here. I don't want to spoil too much. The mission book will tell you that at some point after a mission, for example, you get more green or more base equipment cards here, base green equipment card decks. It tells you the numbers, all the cards are numbered. Other green equipment cards are still locked until later. You find the green rare equipment card, again it tells you its number, and you place it near the drop deck. So basically this is now in your possession, it's in the game. And then when a monster equipped with such a green monster weapon card, which I just showed, you take that card and you shuffle it into the rare green, the drop deck. So here it is, this is the card they were referring to, 121. That was unlocked at some point in the story, the book will tell you when. You shuffle that into the drop deck, and then whenever you draw it, you read what it says, and it says, hey, draw once from the green equipment deck. Now you can't shuffle in more cards than you've unlocked, of course, but when you draw that, you get a cool green equipment deck card, and those are lots better than the brown equipment cards, and then you can decide which character, which family member will get that card. And of course there are also blue equipment cards like that. The drop deck will also have so-called trophy cards, so let's search for them. So here it says, for example, this is different. This says draw once from the item deck. You can get an item from this deck as well, which is also here. Here is a monster trophy card. They look like this with this trophy icon. And when that happens, you just do what it says in the card. You basically randomly decide a monster card from the previous fighting phase. You can roll a d6 or a d8. So now we have two, so you could say all the uneven numbers on a d6 would be this one, and the even numbers would be that one. So I, in this case, would take a d6, I would roll it, and that's uneven, so that would mean the guard dog. And then I check the card, and as you've noticed, it also has that icon right here. I hadn't explained it yet. So this has 2 trophy points. This one has 3. And then you note that on your character sheet. And later on in the adventure, the family members can spend those monster trophy points to unlock equipment collections. And those are like sets of 5 to 6 new equipment cards that you shuffle permanently into their respective equipment decks. So that's monster trophies. We haven't explained yet what XP does. So how do you gain XP? So every time at the end of a fighting phase, when all the monsters are defeated, you add together all defeated monsters' XPs. So you just add those up, and it is per standee. So if there's multiple guard dogs, you get that much XP per guard dog. And you just note that in the family XP. So every family member gets that. And when a monster is defeated, the family member that did the final blow, the killing blow, they get my XP. So they get basically double for that monster. But again, when you're knocked out, you lose half of your my XP points. And later during the game, there are also missions where after a mission or by completing personal challenges, you can get bonus XP. And then between missions, you add up all of that XP. So your family XP, your personal XP, and your bonus XP. You put that in the total XP here. So here's the bonus XP and the total XP. Then you can erase all of these XP points, just keep your total XP, and then you check here on this table in the bottom here if you can level up. So level 1 is 45 XP, you get 2 TP or 1 TP and 1 WPP. And TP stands for talent points and WPP is weapon proficiency points. And weapon proficiencies are here on this table and the talent points are here, but I'm not going to explain too much about that right now. Now the rulebook goes into more detail on all the points that I mentioned here, but I just wanted to give a general overview of the most important things you need to know to get started. And if you read the rulebook, you'll read some more nuances and some more details here and there. So it is good to read the rulebook before you start. And you might have to reference the rulebook during your first couple of playthroughs, but it will get easier once you get the hang of it, and you don't need to remember everything at once, especially during the first missions. They will be relatively simple, and then as you go on into the game, you get more of those things that get added in, more rules, more things happen. So you learn as you play, as it were. But that is basically how you play the Ghosts Betwixt. Let's go to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on the Ghosts Betwixt by Dustin Freund. Well, let's start with the components. There is plenty of components in this game. You get all kinds of standees. The standees are made of a standard normal thickness. They're quite good. They are printed nicely, and you get these simple stands that you can put them in, and they came with a sticker sheet with numbers as well, so you can sticker some of these stands so you can discern between monsters of the same monster group. So for example, if you have like 3 dogs, that's one monster group, and you can put them on the 1, 2, and 3 stand so you know which dog is which on the board. So that works pretty well. There's hundreds of tokens. There's bags full of tokens, a huge bag of monster tokens. There's a whole bunch of different monsters, so there's plenty of variety there. You got your health and your action point, your family point tokens as well. You can use those to track, of course, on your board. Although the deluxe version also came with these dials, which I do prefer using. So you can just use the dials to keep track of your health and your family points. And that quality is good as well. There's a bunch of dice. They're on the smaller side, the smaller shape of dice, size of dice. But they are all printed with their custom faces. There's a lot of them. There's not just these here. I also just got another baggie to keep the rest in, because there's a lot of dice, and they seem to be printed very, very well, so I don't see those scratching off anytime soon. There you get an extra D8 for spawning maps that have more than 8 squares, and a couple of those D6s as well. So all of that is pretty good. The tiles are of a very good quality as well. Also the same thickness as the standees and the tokens, but nice and sturdy, as you can tell, I hope. So those are good as well. They're all printed on both sides, so you get plenty of map tiles for the entire story. You get plenty of cards as well. You get the smaller cards with your equipment that you can draw, the loot basically that you get. There's drop decks, there's item decks, and these are also very good quality and also printed very clearly, so that's good. The font is pretty small, but yeah, still pretty good and easy to read. You get the bigger cards for the monsters, are also of the same quality, pretty good quality. Also printed very clearly. The layout is clear. So you have those, and of course the family members are also standees with their own colored stands, so they're all color coded. That makes them easy to tell apart, and all the character boards that you get here are also, this is a thinner cardboard, but they're big enough so that you can put all your cards on these slots. You can put your tokens here if you don't use this. You can track some of these stances that you have, so you get these tokens and you can put them on. Although these tokens are bigger than these indicated here, so as you can see, that does, kind of overlap a bit. But yeah, I mean, there is room enough so you can still use this. You can store your conditions here, and yeah, there's all kinds of spots for everything and reminders of what kind of dice you have. So that's pretty clear as well. Those are only single-sided. So you have those, and every player can have one of these reference cards, which is an absolute boon because there's a lot to keep track of here. You have the different phases that you need to go through: the exploration phase, the drawing phase, the spawning phase, and the fighting phase. They're all listed here and explained in a couple of bullet points what you need to do in each phase. So that really helps, especially in your first couple of playthroughs. And on the back, you have some more information about your actions that you can take. So you can move, you can attack, you can use a talent, you can take an offensive or a defensive stance, you can use an item, you can ready equipment that you got, or you can trade with a family member. And then there's the dice. They're all color coded, and they're basically 3 different types of dice. You get your hit dice, your damage dice, and your defense dice. and they kind of have increasing strength. You know, they get better as they go up, and those are color coded as well, and they are explained here. This is important because, you know, the colors themselves don't really mean that much, so you really need this reference card, and it also explains all the different icons that are on the dice. So most of the things that you need to remember are on this single card, which is pretty good, because otherwise the mission guide, which is a pretty nice and thick book as well, also nicely bound, and yeah, of good quality. The mission guide explains everything you need to do, and also with pictures and tables and charts, and that's all well done, I think. It was easy to follow, and there's a quick setup guide, so you have your quick guide. That's also great. You get a quick play guide to set up your first game, and then there's the rules reference guide, which is also not a very thick. This basically has all the rules, but you start with this to get started, and then if you need to look something up, you can use this. So you can get right in on the action, and it's got the conditions on the back there as a reference, and there's a couple of reference sheets in here. This the rules book has a full index of all the types of words and terms you can encounter. It even has some extra sheets. You can copy these and then fill them in, so you can keep track of what your family member gets and has in XP and in Bennard bucks, etc. So all of that is quite well done, I think. This is a very well thought out game, in my opinion. So and the components do show that. The artwork is fabulous. I really like the artwork by Travis Hansen. Travis Hansen has a webcomic called Life of the Party. And I'll put a link in the description below. It's quite fun. And this entire game was illustrated by him. The tiles, the characters, the monsters, stuff on the cards, the box cover, of course. So that really makes it feel like this entire story is a cartoon. You're playing through this story. It's set in rural America in the 90s, and that's really unique. I really like that. It's pretty light-hearted as well, and I think the art style conveys that very well. So big thumbs up on the art. The theme, like I said, is also very unique, very fun. It's different from the regular fantasy or sci-fi dungeon crawlers, and as much as I love those, it's really refreshing to have a different kind of theme, a Halloween theme, nice and spooky, not too serious, and I enjoy that very much. The gameplay I find in all pretty fun. There's a lot to take in at the start. The quick guide does help just get started, and it's not too difficult the first time you play, but you do need to keep track of a lot of things. There's all the different dice, like I said, there's all the different tokens, and there's lots of tokens. There's bags full of tokens. You got your map tokens to spawn the next room, so you determine which room you get after opening a door. You get your fate tokens, I think they're called, which basically tells you you draw 3 per room you explore, and they tell you what you find. So you can find more doors, you can find traps, you can find monsters, of course, there's ambushes, there's story points, there's all kinds of stuff you can find, and that's all of these tokens, and I try to keep them separate a bit. So you got a lot of Ziploc bags here, and yeah, there's tokens for tracking stuff for your character, for defense or whatever. And you do get, which is handy, a token that says active and exhausted for each family member in their own color. So I basically keep all the family member standees and the reference card and their tracking tokens in their own separate Ziploc bag, so I can just hand those to every player and they have what they need and they can get started. So that's, yeah, that is handy to have those tokens to keep track of your things. There's status tokens that you can, conditions, and there's like boons that you can get, like buffs, like you feel refreshed or sharpened or amped, or yeah, concentrated, and monsters can get those as well. And there's also negative ones in this bag here. You can get blinded or disarmed or crippled. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of extra baggies with tokens. So that does take a bit of a setup though. So setup is a bit of work because you need to get all those tokens, check the book, which ones you need, put all those on the table. So I definitely think the game would benefit from a decent insert, which right now is just a cardboard, basically a vault. So there's not much of an insert there. So I'm going to try and create something myself probably, so you can just take out the trays, put them on the table and be done. So the setup will be a lot faster that way. But otherwise the gameplay is pretty good. Like I said, you have these different phases, so I'll highlight those again. So first you explore, you basically just look around the room, see if you can actually search for loot. And then if you want to open a door and explore into the next room, then you draw the tokens. You draw which room you will find next. You will draw which monsters or traps or whatever you find in that room. And then you spawn those one by rolling the dice and basically determining on which square something spawns. Then if you find monsters, you take their monster card and then you check what is that? Oh, this is a Rabid Ferrets card. So you take a number of ferrets indicated by the story chapter. It will say, for this example, in chapter 1, you get like 3 ferrets whenever you draw the ferret token. And you take the card, you put it on a table, and that basically has all the stats for the monsters. So you don't have to reference the book, you just look at the card and you know what the monsters do. And sometimes you need to draw a weapon, so the card will say, hey, this is a melee creature or a ranged creature. And then you need to draw, for some of those, you need to draw extra cards because they have monster weapons. And you have your humanish and your beastly weapons, basically. And the humanish are usually like weapons, of course. They can be a slingshot or a knife or something like that. And you will put them around your monster card, because every separate monster from that group, so this one, for example, will have their own card, if they have any. So you put those around, basically, so you keep track of monster 1, 2, and 3, and they all have different weapons, which is kind of fun. So they can have different kind of attacks every time. So the monsters are kind of randomized and made differently. And yeah, so the monsters have things like corrosive spittle, or piercing eyes, or jagged nails, stuff like that. That's, you know, beastly weapons, as the card says. So combat is a lot of fun. So after drawing your tokens, when you're exploring and spawning all of that, you get your fighting phase. So then combat starts, and you have to position yourself. Positioning is important. You can attack from the rear, which buffs some of your attack dice. Then you find out how many dice you get to roll. So you check your basic stats, your items that you have, your weapons that you're using. You gather all of those dice and you roll it together with the monster's defense dice. You roll them all together and then you check whether they block or evade or whatever, or if you score a hit, and if you do score a hit, how many points did you score, and then you subtract that from the monster's health, and if they're defeated, you take one of those off the board and you get XP for that, which you can later use again to upgrade your character, which is also pretty fun. So there is quite a bit of depth in this game. But yeah, the first couple of times you'll play, you'll probably have to look up stuff and you know, check out the rules reference book a couple of times. But after a few plays, you'll get the hang of it. It's not that difficult. It looks a bit daunting at first, but really it's not that difficult. I would say this is a very medium dungeon crawler, perhaps even light. I think this is definitely playable. It says ages 14 and up, and I think that's definitely easily feasible. And the game comes with 6 stories and some, what were they called again? You get some little stories in between where you can gather stuff. What was it called again? A scavenger hunt. That's it, a scavenger hunt. You can repeat those as many times as you like, just, you know, searching about the Bennard's farm in search of items that you might need for your next mission. So this is a pretty thick book, and 6 missions might not seem like a lot, but every mission is divided into these sub-chapters, and you have these cards, which I have in this baggie, and they will tell you what your first objective is, basically. So you go for the first objective and you complete that. You flip over the card and you read the card, and you take the second card, and that's the second objective in that same mission. So you have a number of cards that you need to play through, which bring you to new rooms on new terrain, and with new monsters, of course. So there's quite a bit to go through each mission, each story. And officially, the rules say that whenever a family member is knocked out, is defeated, you can continue playing and finish the mission, and then in the next, the next story, bring everybody back again. But you can also, house rule that a bit. I've talked to Dustin about this. We had a particularly stroke of bad luck in one of the chapters where I just kept rolling really badly. I kept missing all of my attacks, and eventually my character was knocked out, and I had to kind of wait it out. So he said, well, whenever you finish one of those objective cards, just revive that family member with 1 or 2 hit points and just keep playing. Just stay in the background a bit, because, you need to recover, and you can use some healing until you're back in the fight again. So you can totally do that. The main objective here, he said, is to have fun with the game, and you don't need to take the rules too strictly, but you can of course go hardcore, and if someone is knocked out, they're out until the next mission, or you just have to replay the entire mission. You can totally do that as well. The replayability is also pretty good, because even after you've played through a chapter, everything in the chapter is randomized. The layout of the areas you visit is randomized. The monsters you encounter, there are fixed types of monsters that you encounter in each mission, but when they appear and how many appear, well, that is also randomized. So you'll get different monsters in different rooms and different fights, and you'll get different humanish and beastly monster weapons that they draw, and you'll get different items every time that you search. So all of that is randomized. So every time you replay a mission, it'll be completely different. You just know, well, I probably know which rooms to expect, but I don't know when or how the layout is going to be, and I know which monsters to expect. But again, you don't know when you will encounter them. So there's a lot of randomized stuff in the game. And I mean, these 6 missions are, like I said, that's a pretty thick book, and they all have their own objectives. So these are all of these cards in this deck are basically missions, objectives that you have to complete, which can take up about half an hour to an hour for each card, if you're familiar with the game. So that's a nice thick deck of cards to play through, and before you've played through it all, you'll have played plenty of hours, and then should you ever want to replay it, it's going to be totally different. Finally, there's the language dependency. Since this is a very story-driven dungeon crawler, there is a lot of text here, so it is absolutely language dependent, which does mean that you need to have a firm grasp of the English language in order to be able to play this, which might be a problem for some. Fortunately, I do understand English well enough, and the people I play with do as well. And you can always explain, but that is something you need to keep in mind, because all of these cards, your equipment cards, your item cards, everything in this game has lots of text on it. And of course, there's the mission guide, which has the whole lore and the whole story that you also read. So it's definitely language dependent. So do keep in mind if you're deciding whether to get this game or not. All in all, I very much enjoy playing this game. I like that it's different. I like that it is randomized a lot. There is some strategy, there is some luck with the dice as well, but I do like chucking some dice in my dungeon crawlers. I like the theme, I like the art. I do wish, there was a better insert for this, but I'll have to make something myself to speed up the setup, because the setup does take a bit of time with all the tokens you need to get out and divide, and every chapter tells you which tokens you need for your spawning every time you open a door. So there is that, But all in all, I had good fun. We're all about halfway through the game with our group, and it's a lot of fun. I always look forward to playing it again. I'd also like to thank Dustin Freund for providing a copy for me to review. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and please also check out my Patreon page by clicking the link in the description below or the icon at the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.